every time I start to think about it, I get depressed and then stop.
Today we're going to talk to Lior Steinberg.
Lior Steinberg.
Lior Steinberg. Lior, how would you describe your passion?
So my true passion is to see places, see what's wrong with them, and trying to imagine better future.
In theory, the project you seem to have taken on, it seems like it is almost unachievable.
I agree. So I'm doing all this effort, and meanwhile, more highways are being built.
Yeah.
More roads are being constructed. More cars are being sold.
How does that make you feel? Do you think there's something we as a community could still do that could save climate change, or is it even already too late?
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm really afraid of it.
Lior,
hey.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me into your home. Truly appreciate that.
Thanks for doing all the way from Friesland to Rotterdam.
Yeah. I like to start all my podcasts with the exact same question because I feel like it sets the tone for the rest of the conversation. And that question is, are you happy?
I guess yes, I am, pretty much.
What, in your opinion, is required to live a happy life?
I think that there should be a synergy or an equal idea between what you want to do in life and what you actually do.
Okay.
So if you believe you need to be something very important and you aren't, you're probably going to be miserable.
Right.
Or if you're doing a work that you got stuck to do, but you have another dream, you're also probably going to be pretty miserable. So I try to at least turn my life the way I want it to be, which of course is not easy, but I try. Yeah.
Well, that is a good start to my follow-up question, which is what makes you happy?
So for me, what makes me happy, or at least what gives me pleasure, is being in a state that is not stressful. So being able to just do the things I want without being stressed or scared or annoyed.
Yeah.
So that's what makes me happy. And of course, being with friends, family, which is a cliche, but it's also researched.
It's important.
That
Exactly.
those things make you happy. So being with people who love you and that you love them, and try to do it as much as you can, makes me happy. And of course, my work, which I'm privileged to have a work that also makes me happy. So doing works that makes other people's life better, which is turning cities into nicer places. This makes me happy, which is funny that I found a work that also makes me happy.
Well, that's a beautiful transition to my next question.
I know all your questions.
You're doing a good job so far.
I'm trying to read them out.
How would you describe your passion?
So my true passion is to see places, see what's wrong with them, and trying to imagine better future.
Mm-hmm.
It's really terrible to walk with me in another city when I go to travel with friends or family, because all I talk about is the shape of the street,
or
the traffic,
yeah,
the angle benches are situated, the height of sidewalks. I mean, it's terrible to walk with me.
Yeah.
But this is truly what I can talk all day long on how streets are designed, how public spaces are designed, how buildings are situated, and it is truly my passion to try to understand why some places are cool and some places are not working well. And I truly can do it every day for years.
And how did that passion start?
I think that for a lot of at least white men, urbanists, it starts with sitting in traffic and thinking that you can solve it.
Okay.
So you sit in a traffic jam.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you have of those in
Friesland, not so much, but
on the highway, right?
But exactly. Or like my travel down today, I planned in an extra half an hour on top of the travel time already. So I've experienced it.
And I think that most people who sit in traffic they think, there must be a solution.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous, especially if every day you do it.
Yeah.
Think, why don't we build another lane? Or why don't we build an extra level of road above this road?
Yeah.
Or a tunnel, another tunnel. So this is what got me attracted in urbanism, just trying to think what makes traffic become so bad.
Yeah.
Of course, very quickly I discovered that it is not technological solutions that are going to solve traffic. I very quickly read, articles from the 50s and 60s that show that if you build more roads, it will create more traffic, and if you will build more parking, it will just make the parking problem worse because more people will buy cars and more people will park.
Right.
And I started to discovering that actually the best way to make better traffic is to reduce traffic, which means that we need to build cities where everything is around you.
Yeah.
And this truly got me into urbanism, trying to understand, why do we keep building the cities the wrong way? Because those are the places that we live in.
Yeah.
So it started a little bit as trying to find a solution, which of course I don't have, and understanding that the problem is somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How would you describe what an urban planner is to someone who doesn't really know? Is it then optimizing specific spaces for human enactment, or?
When I say that I'm an urban planner, most people I think don't know. In the Netherlands, it is more common profession because there's more history of planning cities, because it's such a dense country that everybody needs to live together. But in other countries, it is not such a popular profession. You can see it if you travel.
Yeah.
So I try to explain, and normally I say it's something between engineering, architecture, and sociology, which I'm not sure is the best description, but then people understand, it's social and technical. But for me, it is someone who is doing something very impossible, basically. You try to plan urban places, and urban places are full with people, and every people have their own plans for their life, and you are trying to plan this all. So I think that the first thing that urban planners need to realize is that they cannot plan, or at least not perfectly plan, but they can create certain plans for certain elements in the city and hopefully deliver them. Right. So it's either optimize bus transit or making sure that the neighborhoods have enough schools. You can be a planner that is really busy with education opportunities, making sure that you provide enough services to the population. You can focus on demography, understanding why certain people live in those neighborhoods and others. Housing, playgrounds, parks, public transportation, active mobility. It can be so many topics, and of course there are people who touch on all those topics. For instance, if you plan a new neighborhood, you need to touch all those topics and work with many professions, and some people are very much deep into one topic. So you can have urban planners and designers that really focus on bike infrastructure. Yeah. And they just design that element of the street.
So what do you then focus on, or what do you enjoy focusing on, maybe I should say?
Yeah. I enjoy mostly active mobility and great public spaces. So this is what interests me.
And this means?
Yeah, it is more about looking at squares or streets and trying to reimagine their potential. So, for instance, the street that you just parked on outside my house, it looks like most streets around the world. It has two buildings on the sides, then sidewalk, parking, road, parking, sidewalk. Yeah. So this is the standard way we design streets. Yeah. But there are many other ways we can design streets, right? We can have a small square in the middle of the street. We can design it in another way that will make cars drive slower, or will make the street feel like children are playing there, make it more visible, or We can redesign a square to invite more people to play, meet, sport, purchase things, consume food. So this is what makes me happy, or makes me, I enjoy doing, is going to a square that is empty, or even a road that is for cars, and try to find out if it's possible to turn it into a place where a lot of people can just walk, sit, meet each other.
Yeah. It sounds then like it's actually quite a creative job. Would you classify yourself as a creative person? Did you always have that, or did that come with the years?
Yeah, I actually always found myself as very analytical and more nerdy or geeky person. I was a computer programmer for 6 years, and I thought about maybe studying architecture, but then I thought, I cannot even draw or sketch. So I gave up on it, and only later I ended up doing projects that have to do something with design, that I realized that actually you don't need to sketch in order to be creative. You can also do it with computers. You can write code that is creative. You can find creative solutions with finding out how to use limited resources for a nice design. You can also have a very analytical approach for creativity. So I might not have the most aesthetic, I would say, approach. I'm not an artist or or a painter, but I have more analytical way to look at how we can redesign places. So I would say it's creative because you need to create something.
Yeah,
and in that
it sounds
sense,
like you picked the both of those and managed to fuse it together quite nicely.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's also really a shame that I was, again, it's kind of privilege, or that I could be a computer programmer and then I could take my time and study urban planning. It is a privilege. Most people cannot. They find a good job and they just stick to that.
Yeah.
And I think that it would be nice if it was a possibility. And of course, I know how our society works. It's not possible, but that people would be able, if they study computer science, they will also be able to study a little bit of social science.
Yeah.
And those who study architecture will be also learn how to code, a little bit of programming or data analysis.
Right.
And I think this is something that, luckily, the way my life went, I had the chance to do both. But if you look at how now people study at university, they don't get to do it, unfortunately.
So it sounds like at some point you thought you were on this path, computer science then, and then something happened that made you switch.
Yeah.
What was that thing that made you think, nah, computer science isn't it? I'm going to do this.
Yeah, for me it was just that I realized that I cannot sit behind the computer all day long.
Yeah.
Of course, now I sit behind the computer all day long, so but
it's fun.
Yeah, but it's a fun topic. But no, I actually, that's what I decided, that I don't want to do it anymore, and I want to actually learn another profession.
Was there a specific thing that happened, or did you just think, nah, never mind?
No, I was a computer programmer for the Israeli army. So we started. That was my army service. It's a mandatory service in Israel, and then I stayed for a few years doing it later after my mandatory service, and then when I finished the contract, I was, I don't want to continue doing it. Also in those big companies or startups, and I'm really, really excited about urbanism. I already, by that time, discovered, this is a real topic. You can study urban planning. It's something I never knew. When I was 22, I didn't know urban planning exists. But I was already, this is a topic. There are great thinkers. You can learn it at university. So I was, okay, I'm going to stop with urbanism and with programming. I can always come back. That was my plan. I will never end up being, a waiter like my friends after university or during your studies. You need to be a waiter or a bartender, and there is nothing wrong with that. Actually, it might be even fun. But I was like, okay, in the worst case, I will fail. I will just be a computer programmer again.
Yeah, you had something to fall
Yeah,
back
I have
on.
fallback. So
Yeah.
that was very, very easy decision because I said I can always take a gig,
Yeah.
build a website,
Yeah.
program. So I'm just going to try. I'm going to do my master's in urbanism,
Yeah.
in urban planning, and if it will fail, I will go back. But in recent years, I started again to code. So
Okay.
um,
Still making use of the skills you
Exactly.
learned back then. Yeah.
so I suddenly, I mean, you need to learn new languages, new computer languages, and programming languages. Sorry. And you need to learn new technologies. But at the end of the day, programming is like it's there are different languages, but it's just one thing. And if you know one language, you can learn others. So it's a
Right.
way of thinking. It's algorithmic way of thinking. It's a procedural way of thinking. I'm even doing it like when I'm bored.
Right.
At night, on Friday
Wow.
night, instead of going
Some
out.
people watch Netflix.
Yeah, some people, I'm programming, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's nice. It's like solving a quiz or something.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you're originally from Tel Aviv. You already mentioned you
Yeah.
were in Israel.
Yeah.
What drew you to the Netherlands?
Actually, it was a mistake. So a coincidence, I would say. I left Tel Aviv. It was also, I just wanted to go somewhere else after the army service. And, you don't have, well, maybe now, if I think about it, maybe you do have choice, but basically you don't have much choice. It's mandatory. You have to join the army. So after the army, I thought I will just go 1 year abroad, enjoy, take a break, and start studying. And I moved to Berlin and then to Stockholm to do my master's. And I really wanted to focus on cycling. And I thought I have to go to the Netherlands and to do an exchange in the Netherlands. Students.
By cycling, you mean the urban planning part of cycling?
Yeah, exactly. True, because I didn't know how to cycle, of course, but I really wanted to learn how to design cities for cycling.
Yeah.
And of course, you can learn it from books, but if you live in the city in the Netherlands, you really learn how it is done.
Yeah.
And I think most Dutch people don't realize how amazing it is because it's so normal. The University of Stockholm had only several options in the Netherlands of exchange, and one of them was Groningen. And I Googled this weird name. And I saw a film about it, and apparently it's a very cycling-friendly place.
Yeah.
So I just moved there. And
great
then
student city as well.
Great student city, a lot of young people. It's like one of the youngest cities in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And a lot of nice bars and just cafes and nice place to live at. It's a university town. And then I kind of fell in love with the Netherlands, with cycling. It really, really made me happy that I never needed to use cars or even public transportation unless I need to go to another city.
Right.
I just bought a bicycle and I was fine.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it. And immediately I started making pictures of cycling in the Netherlands, starting to spread the word. Of course, I'm not the first one who discovered that Dutch people cycle, but
no.
Trying to document it in a way that might give lessons to other planners around the world, and I never wanted to leave. So
Did you know at that time that you would start your own company in urban planning?
No, that was also a coincidence because I never actually had a plan to be a freelancer or start a company. It's just that I started looking for a job, and it was very clear that if you don't speak Dutch, and back then I could not speak a word in Dutch, you cannot work for a city because municipalities, they want people to speak the local language. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But I could do a small project with them as a freelancer. So I just started freelancing, and I always told myself, okay, if it won't work, I will find a job in programming.
Yeah.
But then I got another project and another project. And then I started Humankind. We co-founded it with my partner there. And then it just became more and more projects. So it was actually, if I think about it, we never planned, or I never planned to have a company, or it was just let's do it until I don't have projects. And what it turns out, We have
And you still have projects?
we still have projects. So then you
Because
need
how long does it exist now? 10 years, right? Or so?
No, from 2000, I would say 17. So only 5.5
still
years.
5 years on. That's
yeah. And then you have enough project. You need to hire someone.
yeah, exactly.
And then you need to hire another person.
Yeah.
It's a small company, but
it's working.
It's working.
How would you describe the mission of Humankind?
I don't need to describe it because it's written on the website, so I can just quote it. It's we are trying to make cities human and kind for ourselves, others, and the planet. And it's a very, very vague statement. But basically, all projects we do, we try to just make better cities. Either better public spaces, or better programming, or better plans, or better bureaucracy, whatever it may be, whatever we manage to find that cities want to work with us and we find it interesting, that's what we do. And we are multidisciplinary, truly. So I don't think anyone in our office has the same profession as someone else.
Okay,
Everyone has a different background.
Yeah.
I'm the only urban planner, I think, or maybe there is one more. But then more from the, some people are more from the design side, from social side. So we're truly multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
And that's why our projects are also attacking this challenge from different angles.
Yeah. So what is then the biggest challenge you're currently facing within not just Humankind, but also urban planning?
The biggest challenge is that we used our latest 5 decades, I'd say the post-war good years of economic growth. We as in planners, decision makers, but society as a whole, used the best years of the post-war years to rebuild cities, and we did it in a completely wrong way. So we basically built cities completely around car movement. So instead of building cities to serve us and to maybe use cars to help us move from A to B, if we need it, because we cannot walk, or we cannot cycle, or we cannot use the bus or public transport, we completely change the way we build cities, that it will be easier for us to move with cars. So for instance, in the Netherlands, it's not so extreme, but in most post-war cities, and also Rotterdam, which is a post-war city, you would separate functions. You would put work and leisure in the city center, and you will put housing outside of the city center. So everybody will need to use a car to come to the city, go back. And we made it very easy, so a lot of people bought cars.
Yep.
And of course, in the 70s and 80s, there was economic boom, and everybody could buy a car, or at least the middle class. And we are now doing the same mistakes in countries that were poorer and now are experiencing this growth. And of course, China, for instance, or India, or the Philippines, where the amount of people buying cars is growing because the economic situation is improving.
Yep.
And car is being seen as a status symbol. So this is where we are. We have cities that are built completely around cars. And it is not a mobility problem. It creates other problems like empty streets, pollution, climate change. A lot of our contribution to climate change is because of mobility. Accidents, waste of space, because we are building neighborhoods that function only as living places or studying places or workspaces. So we are spreading our cities around, and you can see it in America with giant cities that are just spreading, but with not so many people living in those places.
Yep.
And now we need to fix it. But there is no easy way to fix it, because we spent 5 decades or 6 decades doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a huge challenge, and it's a challenge that we come across on every place I go to, every city I speak with. It is always, we want to change because we know it's not sustainable to also economically. We cannot just keep growing like that. We need to go more compact and more sustainable mobility-wise. But we don't know where to start. And if we start to do something, residents are angry. So we're stuck in something we built for 50 years, and we don't know how to start attacking it.
Yeah. So just to summarize, though, the biggest challenge almost in all of this is actually getting the people to become excited for potential improvements, but they just don't see it that way.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can get people excited for something they don't see. So maybe you need to, I don't know what you need to do. And we try from every angle. Maybe you need to force it. Maybe you need to let people try out something else and see if it works. Or maybe you need to listen to the people, and then you cannot do anything. And of course, I don't want to paint it black and white. There are a lot of people that see, and a lot of people that actually living in places not like the Netherlands and still commit to use the bicycles, although it's a dangerous thing. So there are a lot of people already. I mean, it's not that only some urban planners want to change the world, but it is very difficult because politicians are many times afraid. People don't like change.
Yeah.
Especially people with cars tend to be on the, let's say, more well off because you could afford something that is quite expensive, which means you have more access to media, lawyers, politicians, and it's sort of a vicious circle. And it is very difficult to break. You need really, really, really strong leaders to break it.
Yeah.
Really strong politicians with a vision and a long-term view. And you have it in some places. The mayor of Paris, and previous politicians in the Netherlands, the Groningen government in the 70s did it. I mean, you can make a change. You can change from...
It's possible.
It's possible, but you really need strong politicians.
Yeah. Do you feel like the current system in the Netherlands, at least, doesn't really, or maybe not even in the Netherlands, don't need to make everything the same, but in general, worldwide, for a lot, it's become like it's nice if we have the money, but it's not essential, and therefore it becomes put on the back shelf. Or
I think that the new generation of decision makers, at least that I work with, or maybe there are places who don't even want to work with someone like me because they know what I believe in. But I think a lot of decision makers, they know how to go on. I mean, you cannot ignore it anymore. Most people know that. There is no way to build a nice, pleasant, economically active city with just building more and more roads. I think most young new generation planners, but they just don't know how to do it, and I also don't know how to do it.
Yeah,
I don't know how to solve this problem except of making great plans, having great leaders to perform them.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of times they just there are so many other things that we can focus on that people agree on. For instance, making better schools. Everybody agrees on it. It's not such a...
Like design-wise of the schools or educating people better?
I guess a mayor, he has now all those challenges. And he might say, bike is really important, but it requires me to remove parking from all streets in my city.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to remove parking because people would...
Well, it's not impossible. It's just a lot of people won't like it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think politicians, it is voted every 5 years.
Yeah.
You don't want to make such a decision, especially that the entire city is built around cars, and just building 2 bike lanes will not solve anything. It's a process.
Yeah.
So doing the first step is very, very difficult. And if you don't have a long-term vision, you will not do it. So you say, let's focus on maybe better schools. Let's focus on nicer parks. Let's focus on... there are so many other challenges, and the mobility challenge is so complicated. And I guess also the school challenge is very complicated. But I'm just saying, I'm seeing a lot of projects that are very beautiful. There are nice plans, but then they never happen because it's too complicated to even start.
Yeah.
There's not enough budget. We can let's wait for another option to do it. So,
to what extent do you think these sort of societal questions should be voted on, given we're in a democracy and all? And as it is part of everyone's decision, if the majority agrees against it, don't you think then that our politicians should?
Yeah, I agree that we need to vote. And yeah, I'm a democratic person, so I think that democracy is a good method. But if we do it, then we need people at least to have the facts right. So and we need to ask everybody. So many times, for instance, with the street, you would want to remove parking, then you would have few car owners that would be against it, and by that, a mayor might say, "Okay, people in my city are against it. I don't want to do it. So let's just leave that street with parking." But then, did you ask everyone, also the people without the cars, or they didn't even know this, but they just take it for granted that there are cars on the street, so they never even try to remove the cars. We've now tried for 40 years to have the street with cars. Maybe we can try for 1 year to have it without cars.
Yeah.
And see what people prefer.
It's interesting that you mentioned it. You probably even saw it. We are currently, in Leeuwarden, they're also doing a test with Bosk. And it's like 1,000 trees that they put in, or I think even more actually, but in the center of Leeuwarden. And these trees can be moved throughout. And it essentially gives this experience as if you have a walking forest throughout your city. And at first, when I heard about it, I also had these same assumptions, like, "Oh, I think a lot of people aren't going to like that," or the fact that certain roads will be just closed off and they won't be able to go around there. But from the few people that I have spoken to about, and that did at least differ between young and old, most people seem to enjoy it, especially when walking through this forest, having all these trees around you, such an experience. And they have to, they get forced to get used to it. Like, you can complain about the fact that the road is closed, or you can just move on with your life. Like, you'll complain in the morning, but by the end of the night, you'll have forgotten about it again.
Absolutely. And I think that I've seen in our projects many cases where you try something.
Yeah.
At least try it before. I mean, when you're just talking about the plan, of course you're afraid because you're not used to things the way they are. But if you just let people try, experience, I mean, people, even if they would say, "No, just keep it the way it is, I don't want the change." At the end of the day, we are quite simple creatures. We like quiet, green places because we are simple animals. We're attracted to green and quiet places. I can promise you that if I will now suggest to remove a playground and put a parking spot there, there will be a lot of angry parents and children who will not agree with it.
Yeah.
Yet, when public space, green space is being removed and turned into parking, there are hardly citizen participation or voting. It's always just being decided because that's a normal thing to do. You build new building, you build new parking. But we don't vote for that. So I'm in favor for voting, but then ask everybody and ask the right question.
Okay.
Well, we are stuck in the status quo, so we are doing the things the same way. And if we want to change, we need to ask everybody.
Yeah.
We never stop and ask, are we even doing the right thing?
Yeah.
And of course, it's very difficult to stop and ask. But if we talk about democracy, that's true democracy.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Wow. Okay, I have some more questions on this, but I'm going to come back to it later. You make active use of social media in order to inform not only what is happening in urban planning, but also what humankind is doing and your opinion on certain things. What are the benefits and downsides to using social media to profile yourself in this way?
So the benefit, I will start because I think they are very big. I got to know you through social media. You got to know me, and we are sitting here now. And I've been in many, many cities around the world because of social media, because people found me and asked me to come and either work there, speak, or give a presentation, or did a workshop. So that's the positive thing. I find work through social media. I meet really great people. Every time I travel to a new city, I just drop on social media that I'm there, and I meet great urbanists. And we walk around the city and talk about benches. So those are the only people who can actually handle me walking on the street. And so that's the good part. And the bad part, I mean, there are a lot of things written on the bad parts of social media. So I would say it's a waste. Well, you spend a lot of time on it, and it creates a certain echo chamber. So you basically kind of always say the same, and everybody around you agrees with you. So on social media, you don't get to have too many discussions with pro-car people. If you're a pro-cyclist, you will just end up surrounding yourself with followers.
Because of the algorithm, right?
You will get notified by only those people who care about the same thing you like. You will also the algorithm will show you more angry things because, as we said before, people are more, when they're against something, they act, like with removing cars. So social media is full of people angry about plans, angry about, for instance, in my social media, I see a lot of people angry about cars, angry about new plans for the city, angry about designs. So it's a lot of negativity. So the way I solve it is that actually I have to say that I hardly on social media. So I'm very, very passive. I just post things because I think it's a very useful tool, and I try not to read comments or actually scroll on social media.
Okay.
Being passive. Mm-hmm. And I do it using like tools.
Is that because the people that then are annoyed, at least, and take the time to respond, that they're always in such extremes? Like, let's say you would have someone who was indeed pro-car, but could at least communicate their frustrations or thoughts in a normal way. Would you then be more willing to have the conversation?
Actually, if someone responds to my post and I end up seeing it as a comment, I wouldn't mind to, even if they're very angry, I wouldn't mind to try to have a discussion. But I promise myself never have argument on social media. So I try to have a discussion. Sometimes it works. So that's the first thing. But also because all my followers agree with me. So I don't have followers who don't agree with me. So I just get people's support, and it's really nice. But it's not, I don't need to read so many people who agree with me. And when I'm on social media and I just scroll the people I follow, I end up seeing people that share the same thing that I do. So it's not...
Do you miss the part of people, because everyone agrees with you, on the one hand, that's nice, but it also doesn't necessarily stimulate growth all the time?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm not there. So I'm trying not to read. I'm trying not to use it as a reader.
And how do you compensate?
Yeah, so I think, I do read sort of right-wing, neoliberal kind of newspapers sometimes to try to kind of, I would say,
understand the other
side. I'm very, it's interesting sometimes to do so. I'm reading American newspapers sometimes, or opinion pieces that are anti-bicycle, for instance, or pro-car, or less social. But I also have to say that I agree with you that it limits growth, and it limits maybe coming up with new ideas, new arguments. But on the other end, I feel that we don't really have time for I really, really, really don't have time to argue with someone whether whether self-driving electric car is the future of our cities. There are a lot of people that believe that this is the future of our cities. They follow Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. I cannot convince them. They don't agree with me. They have a different way to look at the world. And I believe that we can make a lot of change if we just invest our energy in working where people do agree with me. And maybe in a few decades, we can start fixing that other cities and other streets that don't agree with me. But now there are so many city leaders and planners that want to change their city and they don't know how. And we can invest the time there and not by convincing Elon Musk that...
Okay, yeah. As someone who isn't, so this is coming back from what we were already talking about a little. As someone who isn't in urban planning, I imagine the process to be quite hard. bureaucratic and tedious in order to get things done, right? It's a lengthy process of needing a lot of what you mentioned already, governmental support in order to make change. Yeah. How do you experience this?
Yeah, I hate it. I have no patience. So, I don't like.
Yeah.
I don't like waiting, especially that I know that sometimes solutions are very quickly. So I hate it. Sorry.
No, I was gonna ask as a follow-up question. Do you think, I wouldn't know in what construct that would be, to be honest, but do you think these kind of things should be privatized?
I think there is a problem with privatization of urban planning processes because they cannot take into account only market needs. So, for instance, you cannot privatize the electricity infrastructure, right? Because you don't want 10 companies trying to build their own infrastructure for electricity.
No. Yeah, no, I think how I imagine the construct in my head is, let's say the government knows what spaces they have for urban planning for a year, and instead of them deciding on what they want and how they want the budget spent and all that they say, here's a company such as Humankind who has experience and knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, but then they might be able to do it, but then if they will not put a lot of guidelines when they do it, then a company like Humankind can take it to their own direction. So we can decide, okay, we are going to design only a place for people called Lior Steinberg. They get free houses and all the rest need to pay.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of privatization, especially in the implementation part. So you already make the decision and then you privatize the implementation. Or like the example of the electricity infrastructure. The government realized we are very good in building the electricity infrastructure, but we're not good in customer management. So a lot of companies will be able to do the customer contracts and the creation of electricity as well, but not the actually infrastructure, because we need only one company who does it and not one main governmental company. So I think there is place for the private market, but for decision making, we need to do it, I believe, through the government. But I have to say, I'm not a political scientist, so it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Thinking exercise to think.
Could that work?
Yeah. Hard to believe.
In theory, the project you seem to have taken on, to improve urban planning, I guess, largely to fight the climate problem, right? Or that's one of the main factors, at least, behind it. It seems like it is almost unachievable.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I mean, I'm doing, for instance, I remember a few years ago, we did a project in Rotterdam, trying to close off a street for a few months for cars, implementing a bicycle infrastructure and have nicer public space, like greener, quieter. And it took us half a year to just implement an experiment, like you mentioned before, with just an experiment with trees, etc. And by the time we did that, I remember it was such an hard process, and I calculated it. Meanwhile, just in the Netherlands, they built tens of kilometers of highways.
Yeah.
So I'm doing all this effort, and meanwhile, more highways are being built.
Yeah.
More roads are being constructed. More cars are being sold. Giant companies are spending a lot of money reinventing the car as electric and green, quote unquote. Although, we know it's still not going to be completely green before it's using human power.
Yeah.
So actually, it's unachievable. I actually hardly think about it. So only when I'm...
Because I was about to ask, how does that make you feel?
No, I hardly think about it. I just try to do nice projects that make... if I make a nice playground and I see children play there, I'm happy. It truly makes me happy. I see children playing in a nice playground. Before that it was a parking lot, now it's a playground. Or before that it was a boring playground, and now it's a nice playground. This makes me happy. I'm not in a position And I also don't have the wish to myself. Yeah, I'm not talking for the entire of the company but myself. I don't have the wish to change the entire world. I don't think it's possible for me.
Here, do you think there's something we as a community could still more actively do daily that could save climate change, or is it even already too late?
Yeah, so I'm not a political scientist, also not a climate scientist. So I don't know. I'm really afraid of it. Every time I start to think about it, I get depressed and I stop because it's really scary. I mean, we're now having a really dry summer in the Netherlands, which is not normal. I've never experienced summer like this here in 8 years that I live here. Maybe you remember something.
No, I mean, I also don't even remember last time we had a winter.
Yeah, real winter. Yeah, maybe 7 years ago.
I think it was a very long time ago, at least. But
yeah, so yeah, will we ever be able to ice skate in Friesland? I don't know. Maybe not anymore. So if I think about it, yeah, that's depressing. I think that we did prove with Corona that we can change very quickly.
Yeah,
we get used to everything, and we can invent great technologies and policies that can shift society to different directions. And we proved it. So yeah, what each one can do, or like listeners can do, or just professionals, that I think, yeah, I don't have a solution. It's a very good question. I don't have a solution.
No worries. Okay.
You see, I start thinking about climate change.
I didn't mean to make it depressed. Let's turn it back to the other side then.
Yeah.
So obviously, if that is the situation, what keeps you going? Is it the success in the projects and seeing these kids, and you're like, okay, next one, and
yeah, small for me. And again, it's truly personal, because I know that some people have these long-term ideas. This is also very nice, but for me, it's short feedback loops.
Yeah,
short projects. Even if it's a very long project of years, that I've been working on those projects also now.
Yeah.
Short feedback loops within the project, so you can always create. I mean, even if you work on a very long construction of a neighborhood, you can still deliver small interventions in the meanwhile, or even small presentations, or building a website for the project. It's also a nice small project that you can have along the way. So for me, it's always those short feedback loops, seeing the feedback of the client or of the end user. And
do you also take the time to celebrate those moments?
Not enough. So that's a good idea. I need to write it down and write it down.
Because I mean, that's a common trait, right? That we get too caught up in, and the next thing, and then you achieve something, and the next big thing, and the views and the stats and the CPAs and of the world. It's hard to forget that. Struggle with it myself as well.
Yeah. It's and the thing is that when you say it like you say to me, I agree with you, but then it's very easy to forget, right? Tomorrow we'll forget it.
Yeah.
So maybe that should be our 2023 goal. Celebrate success.
I think that would be a nice goal, at least.
Absolutely.
You already spoke a little bit about, obviously, that you work for the Israeli army. Would you then also say that you had a quarter life crisis? Because obviously the podcast is called The Quarter Life Crisis.
Yeah, because I changed my profession. I was like in one path, and I thought, oh, this is not nice anymore. I want to go to another direction. So it didn't feel like a crisis. It's just a quarter life change.
Yeah.
I hope 25 is quarter life, because I hope I will make it 100. Otherwise,
yeah, that's the assumption for now.
Or 120, then 30 is the quarter life. But again, I mentioned it in the beginning of our conversation, is that for me it wasn't a crisis in a way that it was difficult. I had very kind of life circumstances that make it very easy. As I mentioned, I just could take it a chance. It's not that I had a family and children and economic stress that I could not really do it. I was young.
Yeah.
I didn't have economic problems, and I could just try it.
Yeah. One of the main reasons why I started this is because, similarly to you, I'm now done with my master.
Yeah.
And actually, for me, more so than ever, I'm faced with the overwhelming question of what now?
Yeah.
Is it really an office job for the rest of my life, always working for a boss? So these things help me tailor it down a bit. But what I also realize is that I'm just interested in a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
For example, I find this urban planning very interesting. I'm not sure I will go into it, but I find it interesting. Or baking, farming, business in general, content creation. Do you have any advice for anybody who's trying to figure out what path is right? What makes most sense for me to follow?
I'm going to give an advice that I wish I also follow. But I think that for me, I think it's a bit ridiculous to think that all our passions should become our work, or that we need to find a perfect work that is our perfect passion. So if you have all those passions, which sound actually really awesome, farming, baking, but also urbanism and computers and marketing, choose one or two that you can combine. For instance, marketing farmers in Friesland. This can be a cool combination. And for the rest, why not just make it a hobby? Why everything should become a work? If we like baking, sometimes it's even nicer to just bake every week to our friends and not turn it into a business.
Yeah.
I like making hummus. It's definitely not good enough to open a hummus restaurant. So of course, I could sit all day long and think about plans to open a restaurant and try to do it and hire staff and get into debt and get bad reviews, or I can just invite my friends once a month for a plate of hummus and try to enjoy it. So I think it's also something for our generation that we really think that we need to live all our dreams and definitely make them work, because that's the only way that work will be meaningful. But maybe if we are lucky, it's fine to find just one work that is quite nice and related to our passion. And for the rest, just do it on our free time. I mean, right? I mean,
I think that's solid advice. The struggle that I would still see then is probably still deciding, okay, which of these two am I going to fuse and which indeed will remain the hobby. But
maybe take the ones that you like more and keep them hobby.
Yeah.
Because then you will not hate them. They will stay fun.
Fair, yeah.
And the other ones that you can see yourself doing for many years can become work.
Yeah. So finally, what does the future hold for Lior?
Yeah, maybe you, after your journey, can come back with some advice from me. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I want to double down and do more work on urbanism, and sometimes I just want to quit and keep write another children's book and I don't know. Another
children's book. You already wrote one.
Yeah,
we missed that part.
Yeah, we missed. Yeah, a year ago, I wrote a book about. That's a very horrible plug. It's not a commercial.
No, don't worry about it.
It's not an ad. No, so
not sponsored.
I wrote not sponsored, and I make no money from this book. But
still,
it's called The Car That Wanted to Be a Bike. It's a children's book about a car.
Cool.
That wants to be a bike. So for instance, this is just a fun project that you can definitely not live from unless you sell it to Netflix or Disney as a character, which will not happen.
No.
So maybe the future is to sit in a cafe in the city, look around, and write a book about it. I hope I will win the lottery so I can do it.
That would be nice.
That would be nice. Meanwhile, what I do now is I could not ask for more. It's just doing nice projects with nice people.
Yeah.
That have good sense of humor. What do you need more?
I think that summarizes it beautifully. I want to thank you again for inviting me into your home and your time today.
Thank you very much.
And with that, thanks.
Thanks a lot.